In the vast, unknown stretches of space, beyond the familiar stars, humanity had long wondered about the mysteries that lay hidden in the depths of the universe. Astronomers, explorers, and adventurers had spent decades studying the cosmos, seeking answers to questions that had plagued humankind for centuries. Yet no one could have predicted the discovery that would change everything. The mission had begun like any other. A team of astronauts aboard the Endurance, a deep space exploration vessel, had been sent to a remote star system on the outskirts of known space. The mission's purpose was to survey new planets for possible colonization or resource extraction. However, when the crew detected an anomaly in the system, a faint artificial signal, it quickly became clear that this mission was anything but ordinary. Commander Leah Ross, the mission leader, was the first to voice her curiosity. The signal came from a small, uncharted planet, one that appeared to be entirely uninhabited. There were no known settlements, no signs of civilization, and no reason for anyone to have been there in centuries. Yet the signal persisted, drawing them closer with each passing hour. The Endurance descended into the planet's atmosphere, its engines humming softly as the crew prepared to land. The planet itself was barren, its surface cracked and weathered by time. Despite its desolate appearance, something about the planet intrigued the crew. They landed in a vast, empty plain, surrounded by towering cliffs and rolling dust storms. Yet, in the midst of this isolation, a small structure stood. It wasn't a building in the traditional sense, more of a buried structure, like a hidden vault. Its surface was made of an unknown dark metal, and it had a strange energy emanating from deep within. It had been buried for ages, lost to time, but now it was awakening. As they landed, the crew felt a strange tingling sensation, a pull toward the vault, as if it was calling them. Leah, along with her team of scientists and engineers, stepped out of the ship and approached the vault. The air was thin and dry, and the planet's gravity was weaker than Earth's, but that didn't stop the crew from feeling the weight of the discovery on their shoulders. The vault was massive, much larger than they had first anticipated. Its walls were covered in intricate symbols and designs, ones that none of them could recognize. They were not human symbols, nor were they like anything seen from the ancient civilizations on Earth. They were something else entirely, alien. "We need to open it," Leah said, her voice steady but filled with awe. This could be the find of a lifetime. The scientists began working immediately, scanning the vault's exterior for any signs of how to access it. They quickly discovered a set of unusual markings, which, after some analysis, appeared to be a complex lock mechanism. Despite their best efforts, nothing seemed to work. The vault was sealed tightly, as if it had been waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. After several hours of searching, one of the engineers, Dr. Marcus Wells, made a breakthrough. He discovered a hidden panel in the base of the vault that seemed to react to certain frequencies of sound. With a few adjustments, he managed to generate a resonance that caused the panel to open. The team held their breath as the massive door of the vault creaked open, revealing the mysterious interior. Inside, they found rows of strange machines, glowing with an otherworldly light. Some of the devices appeared to be of advanced technology, far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. But the most shocking discovery was what lay in the center of the vault, a series of large cylindrical chambers, each holding a motionless figure inside. The figures were humanoid, but unlike anything the crew had ever seen before. They had elongated limbs, and their features were finely sculpted, almost ethereal in their beauty. Their skin, though pale and smooth, had a subtle glow to it, and their eyes, though closed, seemed to shimmer with an inner light. They were perfectly preserved, as though they had been put to sleep for an eternity. "Are they alive?" Dr. Wells whispered, his voice filled with wonder. Leah approached one of the figures, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch the surface of the cylindrical chamber. It was cold to the touch, but as her fingers brushed against it, a faint pulse of energy surged through the vault, lighting up the dark interior with a soft blue glow. "Wait," Leah said, her mind racing. These creatures, they're not just statues. They're alive. The realization sent a shockwave through the team. Whoever, whatever, these beings were, they had been preserved for a reason. And now it was time to find out why. As the team worked to understand the vault's technology and bring the figures back to life, the air seemed to hum with anticipation. The vault, a relic of a forgotten time, had opened its doors to humanity. But what lay beyond those doors, in the depths of its ancient technology, could hold the fate of not just the crew, but of the entire universe. And so, the adventure began. The team had uncovered the first piece of a much larger puzzle, one that would take them deep into the mysteries of the galaxy and beyond. Little did they know, they had just uncovered a secret that would change the future of humanity forever. The vault's interior was filled with an eerie silence, only broken by the faint hum of machines and the soft footsteps of the crew as they continued their investigation. Commander Leah Ross and her team had uncovered something far beyond their expectations, an ancient vault holding life forms that defied explanation. Yet, the deeper they explored, the more questions arose. Dr. Marcus Wells, the lead scientist, stood beside one of the cylindrical chambers, his eyes focused intently on the figure within. "This is extraordinary," he murmured. "These beings have been preserved for centuries, maybe even longer. If they're alive, how did they survive all this time?" Leah joined him, her gaze fixed on the motionless figure. "We need to understand who they are and why they've been kept in stasis. This could change everything." With a soft hum, the energy in the vault flickered. The machines, dormant for so long, seemed to respond to the crew's presence. Leah's heart raced as she looked around. The walls, covered in unfamiliar symbols, began to glow faintly, the lights illuminating their surroundings in a soft, pulsing rhythm. It was as if the vault was waking up, responding to the team's discovery. "Prepare to activate the revival process," Leah ordered, her voice calm but firm. She had always been a leader of action, and now was no different. The stakes were higher than ever before, and she felt the weight of the decision on her shoulders. The rest of the team quickly set to work, carefully calibrating the vault systems and preparing to awaken the dormant life forms. The first chamber they chose was the largest, its figure towering over the others. They activated the system, and the energy within the chamber began to hum louder. The cylinder slowly started to retract, the surface retracting as if it were alive. The air around them grew warmer, and a strange, almost magnetic pull tugged at their bodies. It was as if the very essence of the being was starting to stir. And then the figure's eyes opened. The moment the figure's eyes blinked, a strange, otherworldly energy surged through the room, causing the crew to stumble back in surprise. The being, tall and lithe, with smooth skin that seemed to shimmer with a faint blue glow, stared at them. Its eyes were deep pools of light, filled with intelligence, but also confusion. It was unlike anything the crew had ever seen before. The figure's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Its eyes flickered between the crew members, then focused on Leah, who stood in front of it. The air was thick with tension as the being slowly rose to its feet, its movements graceful yet uncertain. What happened?" The voice was soft at first, as if the being had not spoken in ages. It was a strange, melodic language, but Leah's communicator quickly translated it into basic English. "We've awakened you," Leah replied cautiously. "We found you in a vault, deep within this planet." The being blinked, its gaze narrowing. "A vault? I was asleep. We were asleep." Leah's heart skipped a beat. "You mean, you and the others. You've been in stasis for centuries." The being nodded slowly, its eyes scanning the room. "Centuries. Time has passed differently. But why? Why have you awakened us?" "We were investigating the vault. We didn't know what we'd find," Lee answered, trying to remain calm. "We didn't mean to disturb your slumber." The being seemed to consider this, then took a step forward. Its movement was graceful, but there was an air of power behind it. You did not disturb. You have freed us. But now we must understand. Time has passed. Our purpose. Before the being could finish, another figure began to stir, then another. One by one, the other life forms began to awaken, each responding to the same energy that had reanimated the first. The crew watched in awe as these beings, with their strikingly similar features, opened their eyes and began to stand. There were no signs of violence or aggression. Instead, they seemed confused, as if trying to make sense of the strange world they had been thrust into. Leah glanced at her team. I think we just made contact with an entirely different civilization. But the reality of the situation was more complex than just making contact. These beings, who called themselves the Voktar, were not just any civilization. They had been once a powerful, advanced race, far older than humanity. As the crew worked to communicate with them, the Voktar slowly began to reveal their history. We were the rulers of many worlds, the first Voktar explained, its voice now clearer. But we fell into ruin. A great war destroyed our empire, and we, the last of our kind, were placed here, in stasis, to preserve us. But the war, it didn't end. It followed us here. Leah's mind raced. The Voktar were survivors, but their history was filled with pain and loss. They had been placed in stasis not just to save them from the war, but to protect them from something even worse. They had been forgotten by time, their civilization erased, their enemies' reach extending across the stars. What do you mean the war followed you? Dr. Wells asked, his voice filled with curiosity. The Voktar's eyes darkened. The enemy we faced, they are still out there, waiting. We must prepare, for they will come for us again. Leah and her crew exchanged worried glances. The discovery of the Voktar had been momentous, but now it was clear. This was no ordinary encounter. The Voktar's enemies were still alive, and humanity's role in this ancient conflict was just beginning to unfold. The vault had opened, revealing not just the forgotten past of the Voktar, but a warning of a coming threat that no one had anticipated, the fate of the Voktar, and perhaps humanity itself, now rested in their hands. The discovery of the Voktar had sent shockwaves through humanity, and the deeper they delved into the mystery, the more they realized that the secrets within the vault were far more dangerous than they had first imagined. Commander Leah Ross and her team stood in the heart of the vault, surrounded by the awakened Voktar. The alien race, once powerful and advanced, had been brought back to life, but the threat they had been running from was still out there, waiting in the shadows. Leah had no idea how to move forward. She had always been a problem solver, but this was different. The stakes were higher than anything she had ever faced. As the Voktar shared their stories, their words became clearer, and their purpose slowly began to unfold. The first Voktar, the one who had awoken first and seemed to be their leader, spoke again. Our civilization was destroyed by a force unlike anything you have seen. They are known as the HFY. They are not a race, but a collective. They are everywhere, and they have been hunting us for centuries. Leah looked around at her team. The tension in the air was thick. These beings had lived through wars, destruction, and betrayal. They had been placed in stasis, hidden away from the universe in the hope that they would be forgotten. Yet they had been found. Now, humanity was part of a much larger, much older struggle. Why are you telling us this? Dr. Marcus Wells asked, his voice cautious. What do you want from us? The Voktar leader's gaze shifted to him. We do not want anything from you, but you have a role to play. The HFY will not stop until they have wiped out every last one of us, and when they do, they will come for your kind next. The crew was silent. Leah felt a sense of urgency that she had never experienced before. The Voktar were no longer just an ancient race. They were the key to something far larger. They were the last line of defense against an enemy that could destroy entire civilizations without hesitation. We need to understand more, Leah said, breaking the silence. Tell us everything you know. How can we help? The Voktar leader nodded. There is an ancient prophecy. It has been passed down through our people for generations. It speaks of a time when the HFY would rise again, and only a race of great resilience would be able to stop them. Leah leaned forward, intrigued. And you think that race is us? The Voktar leader's eyes glowed faintly. Yes. The prophecy says that the one who awakens the sleeping ones, the ones who open the vault, will bring the power to defeat that HFY. We believed it was our own kind, but we were wrong. It is you, humans. Leah's mind raced. The prophecy had been written long before humanity had even left Earth. How could the Voktar have known about them? Was it possible that humanity was destined for something far greater than they had ever imagined? But why? Leah asked. Why would humans be the ones to stop the HFY? The Voktar leader looked at her with deep, knowing eyes. You are different from the other races we've encountered. You have the will to survive. You fight for your future, and you never give up. The HFY cannot understand this. They cannot break you. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The weight of the Voktar's words settled over them. They were being asked to fight not just for their own survival, but for the survival of an entire race. It was an unimaginable responsibility, one that Leah wasn't sure they were ready for. What do we need to do? Dr. Wells asked, his voice filled with determination. The Voktar leader stepped forward, gesturing to the vault around them. We need to unlock the full power of this place. The vault is not just a resting place for our people. It contains the key to defeating that HFY. There is a weapon, an energy source, that can wipe them out. But it is hidden deep within the vault. Only those who are worthy can access it. Leah looked at the vault, her heart pounding. She had thought they were only unlocking secrets, but now they had uncovered something much more dangerous. The HFY were coming, and the only way to stop them was to unlock the power within the vault and hope that humanity was worthy enough to wield it. The weapon is hidden, the Voktar leader continued, but the path is fraught with danger. The HFY will be searching for it as well, and they will not stop until they have destroyed everything in their path. Leah felt a deep sense of urgency. They had no time to waste. The HFY were coming, and if they didn't act quickly, it could be the end of everything. We'll help you, Leah said, her voice steady with determination. We'll find the weapon. We'll stop that HFY. The Voktar leader nodded, his expression one of both hope and sadness. I knew that you would, but you must understand. This will not be easy. The HFY are relentless. If they find you, they will not hesitate to destroy you. Leah turned to her team, her eyes filled with determination. They had come to this planet looking for answers, but now they have found a cause that could save not only humanity, but the last remnants of a forgotten race. We don't have much time, Leah said, her voice steady. Let's get to work. We need to find that weapon before the HFY do. And so, with the weight of an ancient prophecy on their shoulders, Leah and her team set off on a journey that would take them deep into the vault's mysteries. They knew that their success could mean the difference between survival and extinction, not just for humanity, but for the Voktar as well. The path ahead was uncertain, and the threat of the HFY loomed large. But with their newfound allies, humanity was ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. The vault's walls were filled with intricate symbols and advanced technology, far more than the crew had ever expected to find. Every corner of the ancient structure seemed to hold hidden secrets, waiting to be uncovered. As Commander Leah Ross and her team stood at the heart of this forgotten place, they understood that the task ahead of them was more than just a simple search for a weapon. They were part of something much larger than they could have ever imagined. The Voktar leader, whose name was Zephyr, had told them the truth. The HFY, the ancient enemy of the Voktar, were coming, and only the weapon hidden deep within the vault could stop them. Time was running out. The HFY were relentless, and once they realized the Voktar had been awakened, they would stop at nothing to destroy them. We need to get to the weapon before they do, Leah said, looking at her team. If they find it first, we won't stand a chance. Dr. Marcus Wells nodded, his eyes filled with determination. We'll have to navigate the vault's defenses. The Voctor said the path to the weapon is dangerous. There could be traps, or worse, guardians. Leah turned to Zephyr. What exactly do we need to expect? What kind of dangers are we talking about? Zephyr's eyes were solemn as he spoke. The vault was built to protect the weapon from anyone who would misuse it. It is full of trials, challenges that test one's strength, mind, and heart. Only those who are truly worthy can reach the weapon. But be warned, even those who pass the trials may not survive what lies beyond. The Voctor leader's words echoed in Leah's mind as she led her team down a narrow, winding corridor deep within the vault. The air was thick with dust, and the faint hum of ancient machinery seemed to grow louder with each step they took. They had no idea what they would encounter, but one thing was certain: they could not afford to fail. As they reached the end of the corridor, they came upon a large chamber, its walls adorned with glowing symbols that pulsed with energy. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, its surface smooth and sleek, with a large crystal embedded in its center. The crystal was glowing softly, casting a blue light across the room. "This is it," Leah said, her voice filled with awe. "This is the weapon we're looking for." But as they approached, the ground beneath them began to shake. The air crackled with energy, and a deep, resonant voice echoed throughout the chamber. "Who dares to seek the power of the ancients?" The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once, as if the very vault itself was alive. The team froze, unsure of what to do next. Leah stepped forward, her hand raised in a gesture of peace. "We are here to protect the weapon. We are not your enemies." The voice chuckled softly, the sound chilling. "Your words mean nothing. Only the worthy may claim the power within. Prove your worth, or be destroyed." Suddenly, the room shifted. The walls began to close in, and the crystal at the center of the pedestal began to glow brighter, casting long, shifting shadows across the room. The team backed away, trying to understand what was happening. A series of panels in the walls slid open, revealing a set of glowing platforms floating above the floor. Each platform was surrounded by a swirling mist-like energy. The platforms were arranged in a circle, and in the center of the circle, a series of symbols began to glow. "This is a trial," Zephyr explained, his voice distant, as if the challenge was not meant for him. "Only those who pass can continue." Leah turned to her team. "We have no choice. We need to pass these trials if we're going to stop the XRR." One by one, the crew members stepped onto the platforms, their feet hovering above the ground as they felt the pulse of energy beneath them. As they moved into position, the symbols on the walls shifted, revealing a series of holographic images, each one showing a different challenge. Leah's platform began to glow, and a set of symbols appeared before her, glowing brightly. She knew instinctively that she had to solve the puzzle, but time was running out. The walls were closing in, and if they didn't complete the trials quickly, they would be trapped forever. She focused on the symbols. They shifted, rearranging themselves in patterns that seemed to make sense, then shifted again. It was a puzzle of logic, but it was also a test of patience. If she failed, she feared it might cost them everything. Meanwhile, Dr. Wells and the other crew members were facing their own trials. Each platform tested them in different ways. One by one, they had to prove themselves worthy, using their skills, intelligence, and strength to solve the ancient puzzles that lay before them. Minutes felt like hours as Leah worked on the symbols. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she watched the walls inch closer. Then, with a sudden click, the puzzle locked into place. The energy in the room surged, and the walls stopped moving. Leah breathed a sigh of relief. "We did it," she said, glancing back at her team. "We've passed the trial." But as she spoke, the crystal at the center of the room glowed even brighter. The air grew thick with power, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble. "This is only the beginning," Zephyr warned. "The true test awaits." Just as the words left his mouth, the chamber doors slammed shut, and the team found themselves facing an even greater challenge. The real trial was yet to come, and they had no idea what dangers lay ahead. But one thing was certain: they could not turn back now. The weapon was within reach, but so was the danger. The HFY were getting closer, and Leah and her team had to face whatever came next, or risk everything they had worked for. The air in the chamber was thick with tension, and the walls seemed to pulse with an ancient energy. Leah Ross stood in the center of the room, her heart racing. The trials had only just begun, and she could already feel the weight of their responsibility pressing down on her. Her team had passed the first challenge, but the path ahead was filled with more obstacles, and they didn't know what to expect next. As the room settled, the glowing platforms slowly faded, and the walls began to shift again, revealing another set of symbols. But this time, the atmosphere felt different, darker, heavier. Leah glanced around, her hand instinctively resting on the hilt of her sidearm, though she knew there was no weapon that could truly protect them from what lay ahead. "This is it," Zephyr said, his voice low and filled with a quiet reverence. "The trial of the heart." Leah looked at him, confused. "The trial of the heart. What does that mean?" "The heart is the core of a being's will and strength," Zephyr explained. "This trial will test your deepest fears, your deepest desires. It is not a test of strength or intelligence. It is a test of what you are willing to sacrifice." The words sank into Leah's mind like stones. A test of the heart. How could they prepare for something like that? She had always trusted her instincts and her ability to think on her feet, but this was different. This trial was personal, and it would challenge the very essence of who they were. As if on cue, the chamber began to shift again, and the team found themselves standing in a vast, open space. The ground was soft beneath their feet, and the sky above them was filled with swirling clouds. For a moment, they stood in awe, unsure of what to make of the scene before them. But then, Leah felt it. A sudden, overwhelming sense of loss, a feeling of emptiness, as if something vital was missing from her life. She looked around and saw that her team had begun to scatter. Each one of them seemed to be drawn to something invisible, yet powerful. Leah's heart raced as she felt the pull of her own emotions, and she knew that this trial would force them to face the things they had long buried deep within themselves. "Leah," a voice called out softly, and she turned to see Dr. Marcus Wells standing a short distance away. His face was filled with concern, but there was something else in his eyes, something that didn't belong. "Marcus?" she asked, stepping toward him. "What's going on? What is this place?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze focused on her in a way that made her feel uneasy. "Leah," he said again, but this time, his voice was softer, almost pleading. "You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry the weight of everything on your shoulders. Let me help you." For a moment, Leah was caught off guard. She had always seen Marcus as a reliable colleague, someone she could count on in difficult times. But now, something in his voice felt different. She looked into his eyes and saw an unfamiliar depth, something she couldn't quite place. "Marcus, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice tight with confusion. "What do you mean?" He took another step closer, his hand reaching out as if to touch her arm. "You don't have to be the leader all the time. You don't have to be so strong. Let me take the burden. I can do it. I can lead us." Leah's heart raced, and she felt a sharp pang in her chest. She had never let anyone take charge in situations like this. She was the commander. She was the one who made the decisions. But now Marcus was offering to take that burden from her. It was tempting, so tempting, but something in her gut told her it wasn't right. She pulled back, taking a deep breath. "No, Marcus, I can't. This is my responsibility. I'm the commander. I won't abandon that." Marcus's expression darkened, and for a moment, Leah could see a flash of anger in his eyes. But just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, replaced by a look of sadness. "I just wanted to help," he said quietly. Leah turned away from him, her mind spinning. She had faced countless dangers in her career, but nothing had made her feel as vulnerable as this. She wasn't sure if Marcus was truly trying to help or if the trial was manipulating her emotions. But she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't afford to let her guard down. "Leah," Zephyr's voice broke through the fog in her mind. She looked up to see him standing a few steps away, his face filled with a quiet understanding. "This trial is meant to challenge your convictions, your resolve. You must choose what you are willing to sacrifice and what you will never let go of." Leah nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had made her choice. She would not give in to doubt, not now, not when the future of humanity and the Vokter was at stake. She would carry the burden, no matter how heavy it became. As she turned to face her team, she saw that they, too, were struggling with their own trials. Each one was facing their personal demons, their own fears and doubts, but they had to push forward. They had no other choice. The chamber around them began to fade, and the mist cleared. The trial of the heart had ended, but the lessons it had taught them would stay with them forever. They had proven that they were willing to sacrifice their own desires for the greater good. Now they were ready for whatever came next. "We've passed," Leah said, her voice steady. "Now we move on. The Exer-Har are still out there. We can't afford to stop now." With renewed determination, the team moved forward, their hearts stronger and their resolve unshakable. They were ready for whatever came next, and they would fight to the end, for themselves and for the future of the galaxy. The air in the vault had changed. The hum of the ancient machinery was now a steady pulse beneath their feet, and the atmosphere felt charged with an energy they could not fully understand. Leah Ross, commander of the expedition, stood at the threshold of what could be the final chamber, her heart racing with both fear and excitement. The trial of the heart had been passed, but there was no time to celebrate. The real challenge lay ahead. They had come so far, and the weapon they sought, the only hope to stop the Exer-Har, was almost within their grasp. Yet, Leah knew that they were not alone. The vault had protected this weapon for centuries, and its last guardian would be their greatest test. "We're close," Leah said, her voice steady but filled with an underlying urgency. "Let's stay focused." Dr. Marcus Wells, the scientist who had become an invaluable part of the team, stepped forward. He looked at the ornate doors in front of them, decorated with ancient symbols and glowing faintly with a strange, otherworldly light. "This is it, isn't it?" he asked, his tone filled with awe. Leah nodded, taking a deep breath. "It has to be. The weapon must be behind these doors." But as she stepped toward the doors, they slowly began to open by themselves, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The walls were made of a shimmering metal, and in the center of the room stood a massive, glowing pedestal. Atop it rested what could only be the weapon, a cylindrical object of smooth, dark material, pulsating with an energy that made the air around it tremble. Leah felt a surge of relief. They had done it. They had reached the heart of the vault. But just as she stepped into the room, a low, mechanical sound echoed through the chamber. The doors they had just passed through slammed shut with a deafening noise, sealing them inside. A deep voice filled the room, booming from the very walls around them. "You have come far, but you are not worthy." Leah's heart skipped a beat. "What is this?" she demanded. "Who are you?" From the shadows, a figure slowly emerged, a towering robotic being with glowing blue eyes and a body made of intricate metal plates. It was the last guardian of the vault, a protector who had awaited centuries for someone worthy enough to reach this point. But it had no intention of letting them take the weapon without a fight. "I am the guardian," the figure said, its voice cold and mechanical. "I am the final trial. If you wish to claim the weapon, you must defeat me. Prove that you are worthy." Leah's mind raced. They couldn't afford to fail now, not when they were so close. The HFY were still coming, and the weapon was their only hope. But the Guardian was not just a machine. It was intelligent, calculating, and it would not let them pass without a challenge. "Step forward, Commander Leah Ross," the Guardian said, its gaze locking onto her. "You are the one who led them here. You will face me first." Leah knew there was no backing down now. She had to lead her team, not just by words, but by action. "I accept your challenge," she said, her voice steady despite the growing sense of dread. The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter, and with a sudden movement it lunged at Leah, its massive arms swinging toward her. Leah ducked and rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the powerful strike. She had no weapons, just her quick reflexes and her determination. The Guardian's movements were precise, almost too fast for Leah to track. It was a battle of wits, a test of her ability to think and react. She darted forward, looking for an opening, but the Guardian was relentless, its strength and speed making it nearly impossible to land a blow. Her team was watching from the sidelines, unsure of how they could help. "Leah, be careful," Marcus shouted. But Leah didn't have time to respond. She ducked another swing from the Guardian, using the momentum to slide beneath its massive frame. She reached for the pedestal in the center of the room, trying to access the weapon, but the Guardian anticipated her move. It slammed a fist into the floor, sending a shockwave of energy through the room that knocked her off her feet. For a moment, everything went black. Leah groaned, struggling to regain her senses. The Guardian stood over her, its glowing eyes filled with a sense of finality. "You are weak," the Guardian said, its voice cold. "You do not deserve the weapon." Leah's body was bruised and battered, but her resolve remained unbroken. She couldn't let this Guardian stop them. The fate of humanity and the Vector rested on this moment. With a sharp breath, Leah pushed herself to her feet. She wasn't going to let this machine dictate their future. She wasn't going to fail her team or the people who depended on her. She glanced at the pedestal again. It was within reach, but she had to defeat the Guardian first. Her mind raced, formulating a plan. She had to use its own strength against it. Leah feinted to the left, dodging another punch from the Guardian, then quickly moved to its side. She reached for a nearby metal beam, using it as leverage to flip herself onto the Guardian's back. The machine roared in frustration, trying to shake her off. With a final desperate effort, Leah slammed the beam into the back of the Guardian's head, triggering a cascade of sparks and energy. The machine staggered, its movements slowing. Leah saw her chance. With all her strength, she thrust the beam into a weak point she had identified during their fight. Right between the Guardian's armor plates, the machine shuddered, its blue eyes flickering before it collapsed to the ground, motionless. The room fell silent, and for a moment, Leah simply stood there, panting from exhaustion. She had done it. They had done it. The weapon was within reach. The pedestal before her hummed with a steady energy, and the glowing object at its center pulsed with a steady rhythm. But the battle wasn't over yet. The HFY were still coming, and now that they had the weapon, it was time to prepare for the final fight. Leah turned to her team, her eyes filled with determination. "We've won this fight, but we're not done. The HFY won't wait much longer. We need to act now." And with that, they moved toward the weapon, ready to face the next challenge, no matter what it would take. Leah Ross stood before the pedestal, the weapon now within her grasp. Her heart was still pounding from the battle with the Guardian, and though they had won, the victory felt hollow. The true battle was still ahead. The HFY were coming. The weapon was powerful, but would it be enough? Could it really stop the ancient enemy of the Vector? Leah turned to her team, who had gathered around her. Dr. Marcus Wells, the quiet and brilliant scientist, stood beside her, his face lined with concern. Lieutenant Sarah Miller, the team's sharpshooter, had her eyes fixed on the doors behind them, her weapon ready. Captain Thomas Jensen, The team's tactician had a grim look on his face. Every member of the team was ready, but they all knew this final mission would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. "We don't have much time," Leah said, her voice steady despite the storm of thoughts in her mind. "The HFY are coming. We need to make sure we know how to use this weapon, and we need to prepare for the fight of our lives." Marcus stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. "I've been studying the data from the vault. This weapon, this device, has the potential to change everything. It's not just a weapon. It's a powerful energy source, one that could be used to disrupt the HFY's technology." "But how do we use it?" Sarah asked. "Is there a manual? A guide?" Leah glanced at the pedestal. The weapon seemed to hum with power, but it was unlike anything they had ever encountered. There were no controls, no obvious switches or buttons. It was sleek, smooth, and otherworldly. "It's not a simple weapon," Marcus said, his voice almost reverent. "It requires a connection, a bond. The one who wields it must understand it, or it won't work." Leah felt a chill run down her spine. The fate of the galaxy was in her hands, but could she truly wield such power? She was a soldier, a leader, not a mystic or a scientist. But she knew one thing for sure. If they failed here, that HFY would destroy everything. Humanity, the Voktar, and every species that depended on peace would be lost. "We have no choice," Leah said, taking a deep breath. "I'll do it." Without hesitation, she stepped toward the pedestal and placed her hands on the smooth surface. The moment her skin touched the weapon, a surge of energy shot through her, like lightning coursing through her veins. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, she saw flashes of distant stars, of battles fought across the galaxy. She saw that HFY, vast, terrifying, and relentless. But then she saw something else, a vision of hope. Humanity's courage, the Voktar's strength, and the unity of all the species working together to fight for their future. The weapon was not just a tool. It was a symbol, a chance for all the races to stand together and fight as one. Leah's mind snapped back to the present, and she gasped for breath. The power of the weapon was now within her, but she didn't know how to control it. The energy pulsed in her hands, making her feel as though she was holding a storm inside her. "Leah." Marcus's voice was filled with concern. I feel it," Leah said, her voice shaky. "It's like nothing I've ever felt before, but I don't know what to do with it." Captain Jensen stepped forward, his face set in determination. "Whatever happens, we need to be ready. The HFY will come for this weapon, and they won't stop until they have it." Just as he finished speaking, a tremor shook the vault, and the walls began to hum. A deep, unnatural roar echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. "They're here," Sarah said, her voice tight. Leah's heart skipped a beat. The HFY had arrived, and they were not far away. The weapon had to be the key to stopping them, but she wasn't sure how much time they had. The doors to the vault burst open with a deafening crash, and the team turned to face the coming storm. In the doorway stood a massive, shadowy figure. The HFY were here. They were taller than humans, with dark, armored bodies that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their eyes glowed with a malicious red light, and their movements were swift and terrifying. There were dozens of them, each armed with weapons that seemed designed to tear through anything in their path. Leah gripped the weapon tightly, feeling the energy within it surge again. This was it. There was no turning back. "Prepare yourselves," Leah shouted as she raised the weapon high, hoping it would respond to her command. The HFY advanced, their weapons raised. But before they could fire, a wave of energy shot out from the weapon in Leah's hands. It was like a shockwave that ripped through the air, knocking the HFY back and causing their weapons to short-circuit. "Stay focused," Leah commanded, her voice now clear and full of purpose. She had found the key to the weapon's power. It was not about control. It was about connection, about channeling the energy and the will of all those who had fought for peace. The Exer recovered quickly, charging forward once again. But this time, Leah was ready. She focused the energy through the weapon, sending out pulses of pure force. The Exer fell one by one, their armor shattered by the intensity of the blasts. The rest of the team opened fire as well, supporting Leah from behind. The battle raged on, but with the weapon's power, the team began to gain the upper hand. For every Exer that fell, another took its place, but they were no match for the energy that Leah wielded. "Keep pushing forward," Leah shouted. "We can win this." And they did. With each pulse of the weapon, the Exer grew weaker. Their once unstoppable advance was now halted, their forces scattered. The weapon had turned the tide. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the last of the Exer fell, their bodies smoking and crumpled on the ground. The vault was silent once more. Leah dropped to her knees, exhausted but victorious. The weapon had done its job, but it was clear that this victory had come at a cost. She had felt the weight of the power coursing through her, and it had almost been too much to bear. "We did it," Marcus said, his voice filled with disbelief. Leah nodded, her chest heaving with each breath. "Yes, we did. But the battle is not over. We need to make sure the weapon is protected and that the peace we fought for lasts." As the team gathered around her, Leah knew one thing for certain: humanity, the Voktar, and all the species who had fought beside them had won this battle. But the war for the future was far from over, and they would be ready for whatever came next.